What is up, Ivy Leaguers? We got a great episode for you today. It is March Madness. Finally, the madness of March. All the crazy upsets, the Cinderella teams. Anything can happen because it's March Madness. All right, and I know, I'm more of a football guy myself, but I still love me some college basketball and NBA at times. But, I love me some good March Madness. So let's jump right into it today. A little quicker of an episode for you today. Just trying to, get some March Madness knowledge in here before the tournament starts. So, first, let's talk about some seedings and some stuff and the favorites for the tournament. So, first off, let's go through the four number one seeds. Four number one seeds are number one Auburn, another number one Duke, another number one Florida, and the final number one is Houston. So, Auburn, Duke, Florida, Houston are the four number one seeds for this year's tournament. And those are some great teams. They're all coming in pretty hot. Florida just won the SEC. So Florida is actually kind of coming in really hot. They're kind of a new favorite all of a sudden to win this tournament. Because, these four teams are typically the most favored. I'd say out of the 4 1 seeds, Duke and Florida are probably the two biggest favorites just because they're coming in hot. Duke has looked good all year. Really, the only question there is Cooper Flag healthy, and will they be able to keep their firepower going? Let's put it like that. So let's jump right in. So let's go over all the number one seeds. Let's kind of go over my bracket. All right. So I'm gonna give you my final four, and then we're gonna kind of back into why I have this final four. All right, so my final four is Michigan State, they're a number 2 seed. St. John's, they're also a number 2 seed. I have Houston, number 1 seed. And then I have Duke. All right, that's all. I'm going to leave it at that for the final four so far. And you're probably wondering, you're like, why not Florida? Why not Auburn? They're two SEC teams, two very good teams that played great all year. So let's talk about Auburn first. Auburn, I don't think is going to make a huge run this year because of their mindset as a team. I think I saw a couple times this year whenever they would get not even down, whenever a team would just go on a little bit of a run, make a game close, they would start to collapse. And you can't do that in March Madness. So I could see maybe not a 16 seed, maybe not in the first round. But I could see a team like Louisville or Creighton knocking them off in the second round, or possibly Texas A&M in the third round. I could see Texas A&M knocking them off because Texas A&M's already beaten them once this season, and that's a big win for A&M. So I could see A&M or even Louisville or Creighton knocking them off. So Auburn, I think, is a mindset problem, and if a team can really get in their head quick, it could be trouble for Auburn. So I think they're playing Alabama State today. I was looking at that, so that'll be a fun one to watch. But like I said, I think they could they're on upset alert in the earlier rounds in this tournament. And now let's talk about Florida. And I actually think Florida's making the Elite Eight. I really think they're a solid team, but I don't think they're making the Final Four, because they're going to run into St. John, who, the Red Storm, they have been played awesome all season. They're a really dynamic basketball team, great defense, champions of the Big East. They're going to be really, really tough to beat, especially for a Florida team that they just went through the juggernaut SEC tournament. They're going through a really tough stretch of games. Let's see, I don't know who they play in the first round. I think then they'd have to play Memphis. I don't know. Maybe Memphis. No, then they'd have to play UConn or Oklahoma. And then they'd either have to play, there's a couple of games right there they'd have to play some teams there. But I really think I would not be surprised to see Florida lose to St. John's, because I really like St. John's roster. I like their coach. I like how they play basketball. They are a really solid team. They have depth. They have strength. They can score. They can play defense. I really like them in this tournament. And it's not that I don't like Florida. I think if Florida beats St. John's, I think they win the national championship. But I don't see them getting past them because they will be very tired. They will have played a juggernaut SEC schedule, and I just think they're going to be washed. And I think St. John's will be able to physically match them. That's why Florida's so good this year because they're so physical on the inside, and that's, in my opinion, why I think St. John's will be able to match that physicality and win that game if they play in the Elite Eight. So I think Florida down, so that moves St. John's into the Final Four. And going back up into the Auburn half of the bracket, they would, even if Auburn made a run into the Elite Eight, they would most likely run into Michigan State. And Michigan State's really good this year. They've had crazy energy. So I like Michigan State beating them, beating anyone in that division. I think Michigan State moves into the Final Four, as does St. John's from the bottom. Now let's move over to Houston's bracket, or little section of the bracket. And Houston, in my opinion, has the easiest path as a number one seed. There's not as many teams that I'm looking at that are sitting there like, oh, they're going to beat Houston. And Houston's good. Houston, I feel like, is very underrated this season. They haven't been talked about a lot, which I think bodes well for them going into this game. I really think that they're going to come out blazing. In that division, there's Tennessee, Kentucky, Clemson might be able to beat them, but there's not very much. There's not very like one team that I'm like, oh, they could just blow out Houston. Maybe Tennessee, maybe on a good day, but I don't think it's happening. The Cinderella team out of that, not even Cinderella, but the team that I think might be able to kind of surprise people and make a run is Clemson. But other than them, I don't see anyone other than Tennessee challenging Houston in that portion of the bracket. So let's move up to Duke's portion of the bracket, because Duke, I'd say, is probably the favorite to win this tournament at this point. And I actually think they have the toughest, I think they have the second toughest road as a one seed to the Final Four, because you look at some of the other teams in that bracket, you got Bama, and Alabama's going to play good, all right? They're a good basketball team now. I'm not biased, trust me. I'm a little biased, but all right. Bama's playing good basketball. I think Oregon's playing some good basketball. I think there's just a couple teams in that portion that I could see maybe making a knock on them. But let's be honest, Duke is Duke. They have only allowed 60 points a game, which is incredible. All right, just take that stat into effect. All right, in modern day basketball, playing in the ACC tournament and only allowing 60 points a game, I don't know how they do it. And realistically, it's not like they're playing nobodies. They're playing in a Power 5 conference. While it's a weaker Power 5 conference, it's still a Power 5 conference. And then they're scoring 82 points a game. So it's going to be really tough to match them up with someone that could upset them throughout the whole tournament. And then I think Alabama makes a run to the Elite Eight in that bracket. But I don't see Bama beating Duke. And that's coming from an Alabama fan. You know, in a couple of my brackets, I have them beating them. But they would have to have a really good day, and Duke would have to have a bad day. And I had a long conversation, actually, with my high school basketball coach about this, you know. And I wish I could have recorded it for the podcast, because it would have been a great conversation to post on here. This matchup, I mean, Alabama's whole thing is drive and kick. And if someone shuts them down, as we saw Florida do to them in the SEC tournament, then they're in trouble, all right? They don't know how to adapt their game plan. Similar to the football team, they don't know how to adapt their game plan, but if they can't adapt their game plan against Duke, you can't win because Duke is going to shut that down. They have the best defense in college basketball, if not the best defense we've seen in college basketball in a long time. Um, with that being said, with all the best defense and stuff, Alabama has the hardest strength of schedule in all of basketball. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Bama fan. The statistic, they have number one. And they still average over 92 points a game, which is incredible. It means they're playing the hardest teams and scoring the most points. And in my opinion, if one team is going to beat Duke in the whole tournament, it's going to be Alabama. If Alabama catches Duke even a hair off guard, Alabama's going to win that basketball game, folks. So I'm not saying that it's going to happen. But I'm saying if Alabama plays Duke in the Elite Eight, watch out, folks, because that game could get interesting. And it's not going to be really a Cinderella game because Alabama's the number 2 seed. It's not like they're a 16 seed or something. But watch out, folks, because that could get interesting if we see Alabama pull that off against Duke. And really, if Alabama does beat Duke and makes it into the Final Four, I think Alabama's winning the national championship because I don't see... They've already beaten Houston this season. They've already beaten Tennessee this season. They've beaten Florida once. They've beaten Auburn once. Who else have they beaten? They've played 25 out of the 63 other teams in the tournament, which is incredible. Like I said, hardest strength of schedule. So I just really watch. I would not want to play Alabama in the tournament unless I'm Duke. But even then, I'm not one to play them. But with all that being said, I'm going to pick Duke to win that game as much as it hurts my heart, and it really does. So that means in my Final Four, I got Duke, Houston, Michigan State, and St. John's. So let's break those matchups down. It would be Michigan State versus St. John's and Duke versus Houston. And, people are going to be like, oh, well, these are all hypotheticals because there's going to be upsets. Of course there's going to be upsets. All right, I'm not saying there's not. But I think Duke would beat Houston just because I don't see Houston sticking with Duke, especially if Cooper Flagg is healthy. And I don't see Michigan State being able to be as physical as St. John's. So in my final, I have Duke and St. John's. And as much as I would love to say St. John's beats Duke, I think Duke wins. Duke, they just look really, really good. So I think Duke wins March Madness this year. It's a crazy spectacle. Hurrah, hurrah. Those are kind of my picks. Maybe let's talk about a couple Cinderella teams, possibly. I think watch out for Vanderbilt. Watch out for Grand Canyon. I think they could maybe make some noise. VCU also. VCU might be able to make some noise. Drake could make some noise as well. And I had the same, this is going back to that conversation I had with my high school basketball coach. He said, an upset, when you're trying to pick March Madness brackets, and you're trying to pick upsets, you have to realize, if you're picking them, it's not an upset. So you have to forget all the statistics. Look at teams that are vulnerable. And that's how you pick an upset. So I've looked at a couple teams that are vulnerable. And that's how you have to pick upsets. That's how you can't go in there saying, oh, well, statistically this. Well, if it was statistics, it wouldn't be an upset. Who was it? There was a team a couple years ago that made a big Cinderella run. Their tallest person on the team was 6'6". They still beat Purdue, who was the number 1 seed that season, and made it to, I think, the round. I can't remember how far they made it, but still, they won a couple of good games. And that's all I'm saying. So you can't really look at stats when picking upsets in March Madness. You have to look at who's vulnerable, what's a team that schematically could upset the others, and that's how it goes. That's March Madness for you. Well, I'll be checking in as the tournament goes on. Make sure you check out my Instagram because I'll be posting my story and stuff, going nuts, all that good stuff. So yeah, This is Ivy Taylor signing off. Until next time, bye.